Hello and welcome to all of you, and thank you for joining us for our third session of this year's JCoR SDG Lab, which is a project, an event sponsored by the Justice Coalition of Religious, JCoR, and that is a group of 24 NGOs who have accreditation with the United Nations to promote and advance justice, peace, and integrity of creation through the shared mission of many congregations of Catholic sisters, brothers, and priests, as well as their partners in mission. And we come together today, as we have all this week, to offer a showcase of sorts of our collective responses coming from different corners of the world to some of the recent voluntary national review reports and presentations that have been published and shared by several of the governments of the world, national governments. And now we come together this week as civil society to share our own reflections, our responses to those reports from government, as well as our own observations and good practices toward the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. And so for each day this week, we have taken a focus on one of the SDGs that is a priority for this year's high-level political forum on sustainable development. And today, our theme or our focus is SDG number 8, which is to ensure opportunities for decent work for all people, decent and dignified work, as well as sustainable economies, which of course in some places means economic growth, and in some cases it may mean keeping an economy at the same size, and in other places it may actually mean making the economy smaller. So we will have the pleasure today of hearing from several members of our global community who have been preparing since early in the year to not only follow the proceedings of the high-level political forum on sustainable development, but who have also been preparing alongside other members of civil society in their own countries to have some input, make a contribution to the response of civil society to those government reports, and also to share with all of you their reflections and the work that they are doing in their own countries to help advance progress toward achievement of the SDGs. And so today specifically, we will have the pleasure of hearing from Ida Colombo, a Comboni sister, which is a member of the NGO Vivat International, who will speak about South Africa. We will hear from Norma Beatriz Melendez de Diaz, who is a mission partner of the Congregation of Notre Dame of Montreal, who will speak about El Salvador. We will also hear from Oscar Arnulfo Barrera Moreno, who is a Claration missionary, who will also speak about El Salvador. We will hear from Sister Yamileth Bolaños, a Comboni sister, who will speak about Ethiopia. And finally, another Claration missionary, Nicholas Ilan, who will speak about Indonesia. So, without further ado, I would like to welcome our first speaker, Sister Ida Colombo, to begin our session today with her comments and reflections related to SDG number 8, decent work and sustainable economies, on the basis of her experience in South Africa. So, Ida, you have the floor.
Hello, can you see my screen now?
Yes,
Yes.
perfect.
I would like to start with a quote of the VNR from South Africa. South Africa mentions that the labor market is known for its strong labor protections and government job creation initiatives. However, slow economic growth, rising costs, and labor skills that mismatch the needs hinder progress. Interventions such as cutting red tape, promoting fair wages for low-income earners, and empowering youth and women are needed to address these challenges and to create a more inclusive, productive, and competitive labor market, especially for the most vulnerable. As you know, South Africa is the second time that has not participated in the HLPF in New York, but they have published their VNR. So I participated in the report through an international trade union confederation that works all throughout Africa. And we have published an answer report. And in that report, we communicated that South Africa is moving along too slowly towards the SDGs. We wanted to remind the government that the agenda finishes in 2030, so we don't have much time. And we have highlighted that it is true that there are some improvements, but there is still a great wage gap among the different groups, especially women. So all the improvements that I have read from the VNR are good on paper, but they are not basically right. And here it is said that workers need higher qualifications, and they want that domestic work is shared. This, what I have shared, is part of the report. I told you that I was reading a quote. But another thing that we see with some preoccupation is that South Africa is qualified as a medium high wage country. And this is not taking into account the different inequalities that there are in the country. And you have to take into account that South Africa is the country in the world with the highest inequality rate. So this is the situation in South Africa. If you belong to the rich group with high wages, everything is given. But if you belong to the lowest wage group, you can have a scarcity of the most basic needs like water, light, cleaning, waste removal, good education, good hospitals, work opportunities, etc. Everything that is really needed for a good life. So I would like to share now my experience regarding decent work and economic growth in the most vulnerable populations. I live in Mamelodi in the Mahuwe Valley, which is about 20 kilometers away from Pretoria. Mamelodi is one of the municipalities that was created during the apartheid era, where Black people were segregated. Even though apartheid ended, this reality continues, and to this day, here, white people in this neighborhood, in this municipality, can be counted on the fingers of one hand, less than 5. Mamelodi is facing a variety of social problems: high rates of poverty and unemployment, insufficient access to basic services such as water and sewage treatment, and a high rate of crime and drug use due to lack of employment, especially among young people. Another social problem is the lack of attention to migrants that are coming from Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Malawi, Uganda, and Lesotho, who live here because rent is low, despite being subjected to labor exploitation. They also are part of this social inequality that is not mentioned in the report. In the VNR, they do mention unemployment and inequality and poverty as the 3 main challenges to South Africa's development. And I also mentioned that the country is moving forward too slowly, and there are no programs in place to create workplaces for the less qualified people, unskilled worker. But the question I pose myself is, what are the policies that are in place for informal settlements? In Mamelodi, there are 1.5 million people, and the marginal areas are growing every week. Why, for example, are there no data on the unemployment rate? Because unemployment rate is one of the data that the VNR is using to calculate all their indicators. So what data is used to calculate unemployment in the VNR? When I asked some friends who work at the Mamelodi campus of the University of Pretoria about this data, they did not have the specific information because it is part of the municipality of the city of Tshwane, Pretoria, for which there is only a general data, 43.1% general unemployment. Maybe there are no data on Mamelodi because many settlements and dwellings are informal, they are not registered. However, last year, the Mamelodi Record, which is the local newspaper, published that an 80% of the population in the area is unemployed. Another point that I want to highlight is that there cannot be ethical economic growth without decent work, especially for women. We know that in Africa, there is a general gender inequality at the workplace. For example, in the health sector, there is a 70% of women at work, but only 30% hold leadership positions. This data, I've taken this data from the Regional Forum of Kampala. And I think this also reflects what is happening here in South Africa. The Voluntary National Review, the 2025 PNR, mentions that there is a comprehensive social protection coverage, including public employment, to reduce high levels of poverty. However, in many cases, this is not the case. Like, for example, the owner of the room we rent for our project in Skierlek is an informal settlement in Mamelodi. This owner is 50 years old, he's unemployed, and has tried twice to apply for an unemployment pension, which is around 350 rand. which is less than $20 a month, but he has not been able to get it due to bureaucracy and corruption. He has told us that he doesn't know anybody at the public office who could help him. Since October last year in Skirlek, this informal settlement in Mamelodi, we have started a small missionary presence with the aim of counteracting unemployment through skills training that allow to open up job opportunities, especially for women. It is a really small mustard seed, but we hope that it can grow into a large tree. This is our grain of sand that we want to implement here. The main idea is that people in the area can learn different skills and then sell the products made, like custom jewelry, crochet, hats, scarves, blankets for the winter. Winter is very cold here. Aprons, cloth bags, soaps. We have started to offer sewing courses and tailoring courses, as well as with the preparation of multi-purpose soap. In a small rented room, we have sewing machine, mostly manual due to the constant power cuts. All products are sold door to door and in markets and exhibitions that we organize. The women only need to return the cost of the materials they use. The rest, it's for them. Groups are made up of South African women, but also from neighboring countries such as Zimbabwe and Uganda. Recently, two gentlemen have joined forces with us. Due to their age, they are older than 50. They have no chance of finding work. And the dressmaking teacher is a refugee from the Democratic Republic of Congo. So apart from learning different tools and obtaining a small income, integration and ecumenism are also experienced. We pray together, for example, and the project becomes a space for human and spiritual growth and self-esteem. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I would like to thank JCoR and Vivat.
Thank you very much, Ida, for beginning our sharing today on SDG 8. And you have highlighted several important points about especially the way that we understand our own descriptions and our own data and the way that those illustrate our economic reality. And as you have said, in a country that has major inequality in terms of economic well-being, where the wealthiest are very far distance from the poorest, then when we look at big national figures and averages, we get this understanding that everyone is kind of okay, somewhere in the middle. And in fact, it is really that people are here and here. And unfortunately, it usually means that the majority of people are down here. But the data does not help us to understand that. So it's so important, the reality that you infuse into those big numbers by sharing perspectives from communities that probably represent the majority of the population in the country as a whole, places that are somewhere just outside major cities, but are not being registered or seen at all when it comes to certain challenges like unemployment, and perhaps the differences in terms of gender in workplaces. So thank you for helping to highlight some of the hidden reality underneath that national data, and also for the great work of Skirlek Handicraft, which is certainly a great way to respond to some of that unseen reality and bring real opportunity and future and sustainability to a community who is not being seen and not being measured in many ways when the government decides to assess progress. Thank you very much. And now we will proceed to hear from our next speaker for the day, who is Norma Beatriz Melendez de Diaz, who is a mission partner of the Congregation of Notre Dame of Montreal, and she will share her observations about the status of SDG number 8 in El Salvador. So, Norma, tiene la palabra.
Thank you very much. Teresa, can you hear me?
Sí.
I'm ready. Could we show my PowerPoint? I would like to thank you in advance for your attention. I'm going to try and be short. This is my answer after critically reviewing the uh, the third VNR presented by the El Salvador government, which was presented to the HLPF 2025. And our opinion, of course, is based on our participation and our training, the training that JCoR generously provided us with. So SDG 8 is decent work and economic security. And in this first image you see on your screens is a woman. You can see a woman facing a center that is being demolished. And it was a place where many people were working. It was a working place. And according to the latest development policies, this you can see this image very frequently in El Salvador, in the main city. Next one, please. Very briefly, so that we can know a bit more about El Salvador, especially where it is, because I'm aware that many people in the audience are in different places in the world. This is El Salvador. The main city is called El Salvador as well, and the whole area of the country is 21,041 square kilometers. It's in Central America. We have 6.3 million inhabitants, and that means 301 inhabitants per square meters. You can imagine this is a very high density of population. We speak Spanish, but there are pre-colonial languages, which are the Nahuatl and the Poton. We have a presidentialist government system, and our economic model is neoliberal. We live in a tropical climate. It is hotter than hot. And at the south, we are surrounded by the Pacific Ocean. And this area is mainly Christian, Catholics and evangelics. And our economic system is based on the dollar and the Bitcoin. This is a general overview of how the country, what is the framework of the country and its population in the economic model in which we are. I would like to remind the sentence of Saint Oscar Romero, Voice of the Voiceless. In our country, the forgotten are many. And when we see the narrative of the report, we see that there are no real benefits for the forgotten, or at least they are not reported. So, of course, this derives in our review of the Vienna becoming very critical. Next one, please. I intend with this critical opinion to identify the gaps and the absences in the report presented with respect to the reality that the Salvadoran communities live. According to what my eyes see, my ears hear, and what my experience dictates with the population with whom I have worked pastorally for over 30 years, especially with those who suffer from poverty and exclusion. These communities are located at the south of the main city, El Salvador, and I've been working with around 10 communities that are very, very close to the largest center of economic development of the country. Next one, please. I would like to start saying what I found and what I didn't find in the report. In the report, I found a narrative of temporary and circumstantial measures and actions that benefit mainly the image of the government in office and that sustain an economic model imposed by the dominant business sector. In this sense, no relevant aspects are expressed to substantially improve the quality and fulfillment of the rights of the labor sector, which are indispensable in an equitable and egalitarian economy. In this critical review, I point out shortcomings and or deficiencies that I consider important for growing in SDG 8, decent work and sustainable economies. Next slide, please. First of all, let me have a look at the public debt. I found the declaration of a normative policy for production and investment, but no mention of indicators related to the use of public debt, internal and external, acquired at an accelerated rate in the 5-year period between 2019 and 2024, which is very important because it relates the public debt in the end has to be paid off by the population. We are talking about 19.5 million in 2020 and in 2019, and they became 33 million in 2024. These data are taken and confirmed by the Central Reserve Bank. It is a debt that represents almost 95% of the gross domestic product. Nor did I find any reference to the use of more than $2 billion from the workers' pension fund that the government withdrew between 2023 and 2025. And these data have been taken also from the Central Reserve Bank report. And this is very important because this capital has been kind of set aside by each worker in the hope that they will have it back when they retired. And this both aspects, the public debt and the withdrawal of money from the pension fund, this affects directly, both factors affect directly the workers' pockets, which is very unfair because they are sacrificing their income through increasing taxes, and in reality, it reduces public social benefits like medicines, decent schools, health units, etc. And it is always affecting the lowest income families who have no access to education or benefits. Next one, please. Second element is the tax burden on workers. In the report presented by the government of El Salvador, there is no indicator that shows actions to overcome the tax inequality between workers versus entrepreneurs and investors. The absence of a review of the tax burden on the labor sector has a direct impact on their income. And the same is true for micro and medium-sized enterprises that provide jobs and production. There can be no talk of tax equity when there is visible inequality. Tax collection is presented as an achievement of the government in terms of revenue, but it is far from alleviating the tax burden on workers. The announcement of new taxes is a justification for the high increase in public debt. It is a justification given by the government. How are they going to pay off the debt that they are incurring in a very accelerated way through taxes? And they gave a list of around 25 new taxes that will be directly paid off by active workers and also informal workers. These data were tested and verified by the laboratory IMF SAF. In July 2025. These are very recent data. I think that these data were collected in May 2025 and analyzed in July. So the government should be already thinking about how to pay off debt. And that's why they came up with these new 25 taxes. Next one, please. Care work is not even considered in the report, whereas it is one of the jobs that make social production possible. And they are not included in the indicators of health, of wealth and well-being. Therefore, the security conditions for people engaged in care work is very unsure. And we have to take into account that it is women mainly who carry out these tasks. The unpaid care work is was around 18.4 of the GDP, which is around $3,900 million. A recent study indicates that 66.5% of the women are out of the paid labor market. So imagine 65, 66 women out of 100. 9 out of 10 women in El Salvador perform care work after their working day. This absence in the report confirms that they don't have equal recognition in the formal labor sector, which is questionable, especially when the narrative of the report refers to a development model based on inclusion and equality. Next one. I have chosen two pictures here to illustrate how people cook on the streets. because they need to earn a living. This is what we call the informal working sector. 7 out of 10 Salvadorans work in this informal sector. Their income is insufficient. They have neither recognition nor health insurance, although they contribute to the national economy, but they are not recognized, neither recognized nor legitimized in their production activities. Also, they contribute to this national economy. Why is this sector not recognized as an important generator in government policy? It provides work opportunities, it generates its own production, and it lowers costs for the population. Under the regulations of the revitalization plan for the historic center of the main city, San Salvador, more than 2,000 informal market stalls were violently displaced, with the result that many people lost their infrastructure and products, the products that generated their income. This plan offers facilities to investors, new investors coming from big foreign companies, but they offer no facility, and it doesn't even consider the informal sector that I already mentioned. It's 7 out of 10 workers in the country. Next slide, please. Labor inequality. This is another factor that is plaguing, very deeply plaguing work in El Salvador. Workers' complaints reflect permissiveness and discretionality in the application of labor and work-related laws and regulations. People are dismissed without being paid according to the labor code. They have excessive working hours. Many people don't receive overtime pay. The authorization for trade union organizations are delayed or cancelled. Large-scale dismissal of government or municipal employees. Harassment complaints by workers can take a toll on their emotional health and their family life. The closure of foreign-owned companies that fail to comply with legal obligations are not sanctioned. Massive layoffs are the result of international loan agreements. That is, when a foreign-owned company withdraws from the country, they just close, dismiss everybody, but they don't recognize the benefits that they should be paid according to the law. And finally, all dismissals of employees caused by the law, and I say caused by the law because there are some clauses included in the agreements with our country or signed by our country with foreign banks. They are conditions, clauses for the payment of the foreign debts. So some foreign banks put as a condition you have to lay off so and so many workers by 2020 something. And this is serving a new economic order. You can see 3 images. In the first image up left, you see a demonstration before the labor ministry because they were dismissed or laid off. Then you can see how they are demonstrating just before presidency, because they have been dismissed unlawfully. They just received a letter in which it says, you've been laid off for 1 day, but we will call you to go back to your job. And they are never called back. And then you see a press conference of a trade union that is denouncing before the media that workers are being laid off unfairly and illegally, because these dismissals are not following the requirements of the law. So these foreign-owned companies are not following due process. The organizations denounce arbitrary dismissals of municipal workers. According to trade unionists and former employees, due process was not followed in the dismissal of municipal workers who did not hold positions of trust. Next one, please. I'm coming to an end with my presentation, and I would like to conclude by saying that El Salvador is a country forever divided in two: the rich and the poor, formal and informal employment, public and private, illiterate and educated, residential communities and marginalized communities, big businessmen and small traders, and so the list goes on and on and on. In this list, we see how this unfair divide is present in our country. According to estimates from the Lack Equity Lab of the World Bank, poverty in El Salvador has not reversed this deteriorating trend. The extreme poverty rate has increased dramatically by almost 70%. And it is estimated that more than 220,000 Salvadorans have fallen into extreme poverty, the highest since the pandemic. And half of those not living in poverty live under the threat of falling back into poverty. But we should never lose hope. The communities where I share my experience and I minister, I could describe them as communities that are entrepreneurial, facing the lack of formal employment. They start their own initiatives, and they support the community economy. They open small shops. You can find shops in every block in the community. You can see craftsmen. You can see places to repair equipment. That's very frequent. You see small shoe repair shops. So it is true that facing the lack of policies for this sector, the community itself grows and looks for ways to solve the problem in their own way. And they, although their earnings are very, very low, they are contributing to to a subsisting economy. The parish where I work directly, it's a parish that is constantly stimulating the community and supporting the community in their efforts to create an economy, to make the communities survive. The Notre Dame congregation has highly participated in it, accompanying women in their initiatives, helping them to start a small cafeteria, a small bar, helping them to buy cooking heads to create their tortillas, or helping them to buy sewing machines, offering them training courses. We have other initiatives from the people of the parish, from our parishioners. They meet up to discuss sexual educational issues. The families with the families I serve are families that are in extreme poverty, and that's why I call them the forgotten. They live at the south of the country, and there is extreme poverty there. We have new communities that emerge after the banned violence. The law that the government created to eradicate gangs has worked, it is true, but the basic problems that were created through that gang violence are still there. They have not been approached. And how is it possible to have decent work if the informal initiatives that are in place are not being supported? We see that the government, or we believe that the government should include the informal sector in their development policies. In the previous data that I have offered, we could recognize how informal economy is really contributing to the GDP. And it is it's really bad to see how governmental policies are discarding this sector and helping foreign investors that are displacing our own small initiatives. They are prioritizing tourism and big investors and forgetting about the small initiatives. Probably some of you have been to El Salvador and know the reality, but I would like to tell those who don't know the country that we are suffering from extreme poverty and that the government is not paying attention to it at all. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Norma. You have given us a great fast lesson in the economy of El Salvador, and there are many lessons there that I would say probably apply to most countries, if not all of them in some cases. And in particular, I want to highlight your emphasis on the matter of debt in the country, because we often see in so many countries that this figure is very significant. As you mentioned, in your country, it's something along the lines of, I had the percentage. Yes. Yes, so it's almost 20%. Of the gross domestic product.
33
And that
million.
is so important when it comes to considering the public funds that are available for public services and for development. And in many cases, we see that in order to pay just the interest on that debt or to service that debt, we see many governments in the world who are paying more just in those interest payments than they are able to invest, say, in their system of education or public health. And so this is not an issue to be ignored in any country because of that ongoing extraction in the form of interest payments. So you mentioned other forms of extraction as well, in the way that foreign companies come, set up operations, extract raw materials, and then leave with no concern for the workers or the environment. But also purely in terms of money and in the transfer of funds, we also see another form of constant extraction that is happening there. So thank you very much for your sharing on that, as well as the kind of dual economies that seem to be happening. I would say if 7 out of 10 workers are in the informal economy, then surely that is the real economy of the country, and the exchange of goods and services in that sector is the genuine gross exchange, the gross domestic exchange, that we should really be measuring and focusing on when we assess the economy of our nation. So thank you for helping us to understand the way that the economy is really experienced among most people in El Salvador. And now we will continue to hear and to learn about El Salvador from our next speaker, who is Oscar Arnulfo Barrera Moreno, who is a Claretian missionary and who is also going to share his insights from El Salvador. So, Oscar, tiene la palabra.
It's a pleasure for me to be here. Greetings from El Salvador. I am in the eastern part of the country, but the Claretian missionaries are in different places in the country. We are both in the main city in El Salvador, in an area that was very poor at the beginning, but now it has become rich. We have a parish there that was created precisely because the area was poor. But then it developed and it is now surrounded by vulnerable communities. But there is another part where they have developed dwellings for the high class. We are also in the southern part of the main city, where we have some training programs, and we are also working in the western part of the country, working also on development due to the earthquakes that affected that area. And so thanks to Proclare International, we were able to start programs there. And we are in the eastern part of the country where I am at the moment. I don't have a lot of images to show, but I would like to thank Norma for giving this wonderful introduction to El Salvador. But I want to go deeper into the reality of El Salvador and offer the assessment that we have done from the VNR and specifically from the perspective of SDG 8, 3, 8, and 11. I don't know if Teresa can show the document on the screen, please. There it is. I will present a short summary of the VNR of El Salvador. There are some coincidences, some elements that with which we agree, and there are elements that challenge us. Some data show realities, and the Claretian missionaries are trying to contribute to the advancement of the SDGs through different good actions in different areas. The El Salvador's data show great transformations in the country. It is now a safer country. There are advances in education, in food, and in tourism. That's good. So the government presented, I was able to listen to the representative of the government, and it is true that he presented El Salvador like a rather developed country, an advanced country. But of course, he focused on certain aspects like tourism and the building sector and technology innovation, etc. And this is shifting the focus onto what the government is interested in. So we would like to put SDG 3 and SDG 8 in context. It is true that the government is aiming at good health and well-being. There are advancements in health, advances in health and in the reduction of newborn births. The attention to cardiovascular issues has become better. In general, public health has become better. Before this government, there were more than 50 community health teams, but they have been erased. And now we see that there is a short supply of medicines for common diseases, and the suicide rate after COVID-19 has risen. Although the government says that we have improved in health, we still see some gaps. You can see on the screen some indicators and goals that were prioritized. And we can say that before this government, there was an indicator in 2015 that has been improved, which is the reduction of global maternal mortality ratio to less than 70% per 100,000 live births. And in 2015, that reduction was around 42.30, and the percentage of of deliveries that were assisted by qualified personnel had a baseline of 97.70%. So but we see that there is a gap after 2015 that we need to overcome if we want to reach goal SDG 3 by 2030. Specifically, if the government continues closing down these community health centers, it is going to be difficult. So it is true that the mortality rate under vulnerable populations has risen after 2015, and we need to close this gap. Could you move to the next page, please? Here, I try to introduce to you how some indicators have improved. The reduction of maternal mortality ratio, but the reduction is minimal. Since 2015 is 97.70%. The number of deliveries assisted by qualified personnel in 2030. So 2021, it has grown to 98.10%. So, but still there is a gap to 2030 of 1.90. Of course, we have improved, but it's not a significant improvement. What we can say is that in order to guarantee universal access to health services, especially reproductive health services, if we compare the situation now with 2015, we see that access was 67.90 at that time, and nowadays it is 52.0. So we see that there is a slight trend to reduce access. So we can see that there are no significant advancements in the health sector, but a slight reduction that affects especially to the most disadvantaged and vulnerable populations, those who are far away from hospitals or healthcare centers. Can you continue, please? For example, the percentage of births attended by health personnel in 2015 was 97.70, in 2021, 98.10, and in 2023, 98.10. So, of course, there is health personnel attending births, but people need to go to the places where there are hospitals and health centers, and these health centers are being closed down, as I mentioned at the beginning. And if we study the data of very frequent illnesses like tuberculosis in 2015, there was 38 people per 100,000 inhabitants. In 2021, it was reduced. It was 26 per 100,000 inhabitants. But in 2023, we see a huge increase of tuberculosis in certain areas, and the rate is 68 per 100,000. So as you can see, that in order to achieve SDG 3, we are way far away. And if we compare this data with SDG 5, the report does not mention gender equality very much. The Institute for the Protection of Women in El Salvador was dismantled, and institutions that promoted women's rights have seen cuts in their aid. So we see that there is a reduction of the government plan to improve gender equality. Of course, the government mentioned other measures, but honestly, I can say that the report is almost omitting gender equality. And as representatives of civil society, we need to say so. Human rights need a lot of attention in the country. And it really affects to those people who want to demonstrate, to associate, to do some advocacy work, people who get together to have access to journalists, people who disagree with their wages. If there is any demonstration, any association, the government is prosecuting them and putting them in jail. So this is what I wanted to say about gender equality. There is not a big participation of women at any level. And if we want to really see women participating at all levels, we just need to see how many women are doing high-level jobs. In 2015, for example, there were more there was a possibility of women participating, but we see that in 2021 and in 2023, there was a reduction of the participation of women in leadership jobs, both at the political level, at ministerial level, and in the regional and local levels. So nowadays, we see that the situation has gotten worse. The number of women represented in institutions at the political level, both in national ministries and in local and regional institutions, has been reduced. Women are losing their representation instead of increasing it. We know that we are in a society that is very chauvinistic, machistic, that women are doing double the work but being paid half of it, etc. are still women in some political jobs. But as I mentioned, their representation has been decreasing and decreasing, and the gap has been widening. Continue, please. Now I would like to comment on SDG 8, decent work and economic growth. And I would like to study it from the point of view of sustainable development and the Agenda 2030. If there is no decent work, it is impossible to develop a person or a country in full. The Salvadoran government report speaks of job creation through tourism, infrastructures, the building of airports, a big infrastructure. And they also speak of innovation as a measure to offer opportunities to the youth. But Norma already mentioned that there has been massive layoffs in an irregular way, and the unemployment has risen drastically, and informal work has grown. And we are using data from international institutions to support this. The government had to reduce drastically the rights of workers due to the pressure exerted by big companies and foreign banks. So you can imagine that we have over 10,000 unemployed people and compared to last year. So we could ask ourselves, if the tourism is growing, how is that compatible with massive layoffs? And why were these layoffs irregular? Well, the governmental institutions had to reduce their budget to pay off the external debt. So the health sector and education and all the ministries that were devoted to tend to the needs of the general population have seen their budgets cut off. But the defense and policy and the army ministries, they have increased their budget. So we see that this government is not guaranteeing the right of workers to demonstrate or to associate, and that's why more money was devoted to the army or police forces. Norma has already mentioned that external debt was around 10,000 million in 2024, but the fact is that there has been an increase in external debt. And this is due to projects that the government is presenting as innovation and infrastructure and as something very positive, but that have not really benefited the general population. So the CEFAL report was already mentioning that Salvador was the less developed country in 2025. So the growth rate in 2025, according to this report, was going to be the lowest in Latin America and the Caribbean. So we see that the gap has been created by some measures of the government that are in time presented by the government as something positive in their VNR. So the GDP rate offered by the government which has theoretically increased per capita, it's not real. In 2020 and 2021, there were signs of growth, but in 2025, there is a decrease. There is a negative growth. So informal work has grown, as Norma has very well explained. And if we see the percentage of 39.60 in 2015, at the moment this percentage has grown and it reaches 51.41%. This is informal employment growth. And development and informal employment are closely related, because if unemployment grows, informal employment grows, and the government needs to establish measures to support informal employment, because people need to survive and they look for alternatives if they are laid off. And this causes people to go either to informal employment or to migrate. Can you continue, please? So as I was saying, as an answer to the existing gaps and this negative growth that the government is not even mentioning in their PNR, they talk about measures to promote policies and productive activities, creation of decent work and entrepreneurial activities. And they say so, but this government has cut the budget for this. So I'm not saying that previous governments were better in supporting entrepreneurial initiatives or informal employment, but this government has really proven to be worse for families that have been laid off and are actually working in informal employment. There is an imbalance here. Informal employment is growing in El Salvador, both under men and women, among men and women. You can see that in 2025, informal employment was 39.6%, and in 2021, it was at 51.41%, growing, and at the moment, we are in 47.7%. This shows that informal employment is growing in El Salvador. What we can say as a summary is that we could ask ourselves if these priorities presented by the government of El Salvador correspond to the real needs and sustainable development of the population, especially for periphery communities. In general, I see that the government is aligned with the real needs and the sustainable development of the Salvadoran population. But there is a long way to go before there is a total coincidence. The government has its priorities, but the government is not speaking the real truth, is giving the facts the way it's interesting for them. They insist in digital investment and tourism and infrastructures, but due to the economic cuts to health, education institutions that watch over human rights, the layoffs and the increased employment, they are not paying attention very much to civil society, and civil society is not being heard. The local situation and in different sectors has seen a setback. There are many sectors, not just in this SDG, but in many other SDGs. There are many sectors that are staying behind in the framework of sustainable development. Can you continue, please? Technological progress and innovation are important, and it is true that the progress is being made in these commitments. It is important that there is an implementation of new technologies and that women have access to it, especially the youth. And the government presents this as a great advancement. One example of the government is that they provided some tablets for some schools, but these advancements are not covering the fundamentals needs that should be addressed, because there is a lot of poverty and very few sources of income. So certainly there is a type of new gained security that gives a certain peace and a certain stability to the country compared to the time of the gangs, which is all, of course, positive. There were places where it was not possible to get in, and now it is. But we need to ask ourselves how long this is going to stay that way, and how many victims were necessary for El Salvador to take measures and to offer this new security. And there is a violation of human rights that is affecting the majority of the Salvadoran population, because, of course, this government is really proud of the new achieved security. But the cost of it is that the population cannot demonstrate, they cannot speak up for their labor rights or for the environment, because they are detained by the police. Many people need to migrate and to flee because they were being prosecuted for their activism. So we need to say that there are still gaps and challenges. And in order to build a resilient society, to build a developed society and to fulfill the Agenda 2030, we need to work hard in the communities. The government is not paying attention to these gaps and challenges. We need to work more with the communities, strengthening different areas, because the basic products have increased in value, and many people live with the minimum, the bare minimum every day. Of course, tourism is increasing, but how is it benefiting the most vulnerable people and their communities? There is a great inequality, and the government prioritizes those who are not in real need. There is an investment need. We need to invest in the people that live in vulnerable communities. We need to promote the real human rights, not just the human rights for the privileged communities. We need to respect the dignity of women. When subsidies are put in place by the government, they need to think of women as well, who they are not doing so. And in general, for us as Claretian missionaries, we carry out some projects that were contributing to the advancement of the SDGs in even before the SDGs were put in place. For example, in the western part of El Salvador, thanks to ECLA, we have developed a project of social dwelling. We had another project of adopting child adoption. Well, it was actually supporting families. It was not just, we called it adopt a child, but it was a way to support families so that mothers could invest that money in a small shop so that they could run the shop themselves, and declarations would help them to develop the shop so that they could have another income source. We created different community shops where they and also community workshops where some people could be trained in health, others in values, in Christian values, others could learn accounting, for example, for the shops. And so we were able to develop our missionary work to make an integral education of the human being possible, based on the Samaritan spirituality. And the work that we are carrying out encompasses health, education, uh, values, etc. In our parishes, we also offer grants for children in underdeveloped communities or excluded communities, so that they can have an access to education and to achieving decent work, especially for women. We are promoting women in entrepreneurship, supporting them so that they can have a decent job and a permanent income. And we connect this with other SDGs like sustainable communities, and which is SDG 11. We help communities to learn to run their own projects themselves. So what we are looking for is to eliminate forms of discriminations, type of violence, harmful practices against women and girls. We recognize and value the dignified work that women and men do in each community and their contribution to that community. And we try to raise awareness among men so that they help or support their women in their entrepreneurial efforts. And we also try to ensure the full and effective participation of women in initiatives that lead to their empowerment. We are also promoting saving banks so that these communities can use their income better. So we are trying to contribute to this sustainable and inclusive development, focusing on gender equality and contributing greatly to this sustainable development, because we are not just addressing this goal, but promoting all other SDGs. Because if we forget about SDG 5, we are diminishing the effect on the other SDGs. If we leave people behind, if we leave women behind, this is affecting also respect for women, but also respect for all human beings. So it is important to offer solid and comprehensive training with aim at education and promoting not just equality for women, but also access to a dignified job so that they can contribute to the family income. All this needs to be part of the promotion of people and the promotion of families and communities and societies, so that we can develop a, um, a, a, a society that is more resilient. So in general, we can say that this is what I wanted to share with you. And there are different actions that we take to guarantee inclusion and leaving no one behind. Because of course, there are a lot of people that have been left behind. And what we try to do is to be close to the people, to listen to people, to their communities, to know their realities and create inclusivity. Because the government and the institutions do not always offer women participation. So we allow them, or we help them to participate in the initiatives that we create. We help them to create initiatives so that they are able to support the growth of their families. And we try to put in practice the values, the human values and Christian values, creating a type of chart that is close to the people, that is human, that is synodal, and that cultivates solidarity, fraternity, and creates healthy environments for all. Maybe the country is not realizing what we are doing, but we are really trying to make a contribution. We have created communities with a sense of a family, of brothers and sisters. Families are more aware that we must work all together for the general well-being without excluding anyone. And also gender equality is still very deep, and sexist attitudes and some type of home violence still persist. We are working there. When communities want to get organized, I've already mentioned that they are prosecuted by the government. So there is fear. It is very difficult to overcome this fear in ecclesial cycles to give full participation to women. Although there are sexist attitudes, we are trying to put women in the center, because despite them not being given full participation in the church, they are the ones who put almost everything in motion in Christian communities. They are who organize and participate in the mass, and they participate in all the promotion courses that we offer about the SDGs, etc. We have different projects. As I have mentioned, we try to organize people to do some training courses for them, to promote the shops, to create saving banks. And I wanted to talk to you today because of course, all our apostolates are related to the different SDGs, but this one encompasses all what we are doing to raise awareness and to empower people. And of course, from declaration, charism, and from a more embodied experience of the gospel, by knowing and deepening the dynamics of the 17 SDGs, I am aware that from our being listeners of the word, we can contribute so that people have life in fullness from an integral vision where the person is seen in all his dimensions, and continuous growth is seen as that the person is seen is in all his dimensions, and continuous growth is offered to them in solidarity, and the solidarity is promoted to help create the most sustainable commission so that nobody is left behind. And I don't think there is more in the document. That's what I wanted to say, that we want to help create the most sustainable conditions for all. So this is a brief summary of what I wanted to say. And I would like to stress that I agree with Norma. There are some advancements, but there are still big gaps.
Thank you, Oscar. And now I think we have gotten a very good picture between your sharing and Norma's about El Salvador. And I want to emphasize an important question that you were unearthing for us about the question of security. And that sometimes, especially our leaders in governments, present us with what I would call a false choice when it comes to security. We think that we can either have security in the form of military and police that keeps away, guns and gangs, or we can have kind of other benefits and programs, education, healthcare, social programs, and pension funds. And I would say we must insist that this is a false choice, that we must insist on true holistic security, that we do not need to choose in the same way that we should not choose between development that serves the natural environment and development that serves humanity. No, let us insist that it's not development of any kind if it doesn't serve humanity and the environment. And it's not security of any kind if it doesn't involve that fullness of life, vida de plenitud, that you were speaking about. And so we should not be quiet or at peace if the government is taking from one place, one form of security, one form of development to put into another. We know that the true idea of development and the true idea of security involves many freedoms, including not only freedom from active violence, but also freedom to speak, freedom to claim our rights, freedom to have comfort and to be free from want. And that we must move all of these together in an integral way, and not allow for trading between them that only serves the most powerful. So thank you very much for highlighting some of those big issues for us as we see them manifesting in El Salvador, but also in so many places. And thank you. And now we have one more speaker for today. So finally, we will hear from Nicholas Ilan, who is a Claretian missionary in Indonesia. Nicholas?
Yes. Yeah, thank you for the time. I would like to explain about SDG as number 8, decent work and economic growth, based on the government report. First of all, Indonesia is a big country with more than 286 million people. And based on the data, the number of the poor people in Indonesia in March 2025 was 23.85 million people, a decrease of 0.2 million people compared to the condition in September 2024. And about the unemployment rate in Indonesia in February 2025 reached to 7.28 million people, or about 4.76% of the total labor force. In the past 5 years, Indonesia economic growth has tended to stabilize at around 5%, but despite fluctuation after a construction in 2020 due to the pandemic. My personal observation of our country's progress toward SDG number 8, Indonesian Voluntary National Review 2025 focuses on Sustainable Development Goal, which aims to promote sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all. First, a key point related to SDG number 8 in Indonesia, PNR, promote descendant work. Indonesia aims to achieve full full and productive employment and decent work for all, including women and young people, by promoting policies that support job creation and entrepreneurship. Economic growth, the country target sustained and inclusive economic growth with a focus on reducing poverty and inequality. The key targets: first, promote policies that support job creation, entrepreneurship, and decent work for all. Reduce the proportion of youth not in employment, education, and training. Eradicate forced labor and human trafficking. And the last, protect labor rights and promote safe working environments. I also would like to explain some challenges. Indonesian face challenges in achievement SDG number 8, including limited access to financial, inadequate infrastructure, and skill mismatch in the labor market. Some other challenges are uneven economic growth and productivity, high informality of the workplace. Third, social inequality in access to employment, gender disparities in education, and fragility of labor-intensive sectors. And the last one, inequality. The study of Labor Party and the Confederation of Indonesian Trade Union in 2025 performed that employees the employees in Indonesia are facing numerous challenges in 2025, including the real problems that we have in Indonesia are mass layoffs, job insecurity and informal employment, low wage and income inequity, skill gap and education job mismatch, gig economy challenges, regional disparities, and digitalization and automation. And I made progress in promoting economic growth and reducing poverty, but more efforts are needed to achieve inclusive and sustainable development. The FINEAR 2025 report highlights Indonesia's commitment to achieving SDG number 8 and its efforts to promote decent work and economic growth. The report also emphasized the importance of the partnership and collaboration among stakeholders to achieve the SDGs. The second about the critique of the of our government's voluntary national review report on SDG number 8. First of all, wait. Lack of emphasize the sustainable economic growth. And the second, inadequate protection of workers' rights. And the third, environment concern. The fourth, limit focus on decent work. And the five, insufficient attention to the inequity, and the sixth, climate change mitigation. I would like to explain some point regarding to our observation and lack of emphasis on sustainable economic growth, that the report focused too much on economic growth without adequately addressing in sustainable aspect. Indonesian economic growth has been driven by extractive industry, which can harm the environment and local communities. And about the adequate protection of workers' rights, the report has been criticized for not doing enough to protect workers' rights, particularly in the informal sector. Many workers in Indonesia lack access to social security. A significant number of workers lack of access to social security according to the recent data. Approximately 67 million informal workers in Indonesia have limited access to social security benefit, with only about 0.02 of them participating in the social security. The formal workers, on the other hand, have better access to social security benefits, with around 62.4% of the 46 million formal workers participating in the program. And about social security coverage, the Indonesian government's national social security system aims to protection for citizens, but its coverage remains suboptimal, especially for informal workers and vulnerable population like persons with disability and the elderly. Environment concern. The expansion for palm oil plantation, mining, and other extractive industries has led to deforestation, land degradation, and environmental damage. The report emphasized on economic growth without sufficient environmental safeguards has raised concern. And limited focus on decent work. While the report mentioned decent work, but it does not adequately address issues like low wages, long working hours, and poor working conditions faced by many Indonesian workers. Insufficient attention to inequality. SDG number 8 aims to promote inclusive growth, but that the report does not adequately address income inequity, which remains a significant challenge in Indonesia. And the last one about climate change mitigation, the report approach to energy policy should be criticized for prioritizing fossil fuels over renewable energy, which could influence the climate change and undermine Indonesians' commitment to reducing greenhouse gas emission. Some specific concern that we see: first, targeting renewable energy. The government's target for renewable energy has been reduced and the policy framework should be criticized for being inadequate to support a transition to sustainable energy. Environmental impact. The report focused on economic growth without sufficient environmental safeguard has raised concern about the impact on Indonesian ecosystem and biodiversity. Overall, while the FINIR report highlights some progress in achieving SDG 8, that it does not adequately address the challenge and complexity of promoting sustainable economic growth and decent work in Indonesia. The third, the ministry project of our congregation that contribute to progress toward SDG number 8. Indonesia is navigating global economic shift with a focus on sustainable recovery and inclusive growth. Strategic investment in infrastructure, digital transformation, and support for micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises are generating broader economic opportunities. To respond the effort to improve job quality, strengthen social protection system, and support emerging sectors aligned with a green and digital economy, the congregation has some programs for the workers and employees. First, we make work an agreement for all employees, and it is based on the regulation of the government. The second, renewed or update the salary in accordance to the church and government regulation, and promote and help to make work insurance to all the workers and employees. We also try to support for micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises are generating broader economic opportunities.
Sorry, Nicholas, if you could just conclude in a minute, thank you.
In the apostolate education, the congregation works diligently to improve the quality of education, especially vocational education to prepare professional workers and employees. And we have some programs in the parish about that focus on the Catholic school to prepare the future of the people here. And also the congregation has a technical school and also Clarion Training Center to prepare the professional workers who will have the skill for their job. And there are also some social economic projects running by the congregation in the parish, supporting the micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. Yeah, we have here the credit union in the parish, try to help the people to grow in to help the people in economic aspect. And Parish Credit Union here, the vision is to achievement of equitable shared economic development. Next, the cooperation mission, the potential that exists in the community without distinguishing ethnic, race, class, and religion, so that they can jointly unite and have good intention in building a people's economic in mutual cooperation in the form of cooperatives. And next, to assist, support, for the micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises in the mobilization of capital for the smooth running of their business so as to improve their welfare. Next. Yeah, the purpose of improving the welfare of members in particular and the economic and the community in general, as well as a part of the welfare in the members. Next. Yeah. In this credit union aim to apply the JCoR social teaching in the parish level. It is engaged in saving and loans. The owner of the capital helps the poor for economic development. The credit union has a capital of 30 billion, helps more than 205 members in agriculture, home production to develop their economic and families institution, and also families and institution. Next, the credit union develops economic enterprises and helps educate poor children and elderly and also the sick. In addition to building a cooperative management system with a digital system, the main programs of credit union are entrepreneurship education, skills training, organic fertilization processing, and business management training. So thank you for listening me in my report about Indonesia, especially in my place North Sumatra when I work with more of the pensioners here are the poor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nicholas, and for sharing that really interesting approach to a ministry that is providing financial services in an alternate manner that seeks financial justice and opportunity at the community level. It's a wonderful example of how to respond to the challenges you described on the systemic level, which it was amazing how much each point you described was an echo of something else that we heard from another country even earlier today. So thank you, and thanks to all our speakers today for their fabulous contributions and insights. And we hope that all of you will be able to join us again tomorrow when we gather at the same time for more input and insight related to Sustainable Development Goal 14, which is healthy aquatic ecosystems. Thank you all very much. Hope to see you tomorrow.
Gracias por todas
Thank you,
esas
everyone.
aportaciones. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, everyone. Merci beaucoup. Merci un pile.
Gracias, Elena y equipo.
Gracias a todos. Saludos.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for the insight shared. Thank you. Thank you, Teresa. How are you?
Hasta mañana, Teresa.
Y hasta mañana.
Bye bye.
Bye, sister.
Bye bye, sister.
Bye-bye.